In Siberia's isolated wilderness, where the universe is painted by winters and endless forests and whiteness go on forever, a tale emerged that would test everything we understand about thankfulness, devotion, and the strong ties between people with wild animals. What started as a small gesture of generosity from a 76-year-old following Anna Petrova, a number of incidents so remarkable that even seasoned hunters and specialists in wildlife, they'd shake their heads in shock. Anna's little wooden home was by itself. Surrounded by tall pines 30 kilometers from the Kernese closest village is her closest a few hours walk away. The neighbor resided in winter. When the tiny dirt road was blocked by snow road, she might not see for weeks. Another human face that most people would find this kind of solitude intolerable. But in this wilderness, Anna had discovered serenity. Since the death of her husband 15 years ago on a chilly winter's day, in 2019 saw temperatures drop to below 40 degrees, with a hungry wind howling wolf, Anna sensed strange noises approaching. The sound traveled from her storage shed. Notes of feeble whimpers of anguish that puncture the icy atmosphere in which she had resided. These woods long enough to be familiar with all these cries, and the sound of the wilderness mentioned something youthful. Fearfully, she wrapped her warmest Anna's coat, went out into the biting. The snow was so cold that it touched her knees, and each step has to be carefully considered because she went to the shed and heard the whimper. Became louder with a sense of urgency that caused her pain to open the heavy. She found 3 bears within a wooden door. Cubs curled up in the corner with their tiny bodies quivering from hunger and cold. She would eventually learn from local hunters that the person who killed their mother was the poachers who had stolen her. The cubs' gallbladder is leaving them to confront death is inevitable in the ruthless Siberian. The cubs were no longer black bears during the winter. Little than 3 months old, their eyes were full with a terror that went beyond most creatures. People would have contacted the police or just shut the door after realizing the risks associated with tampering with wild bears. Anna, however, noticed something in their eyes. That was a cry for assistance that spoke to her soul, something she was unable to disregard against each and every caution and common sense. Anna started taking care of the cubs, whom she gave names to, Misha and Boris, Natasha, but she never regarded all wildlife as pets. And specialists who learned of her behavior cautioned, telling her that she was making a stupid error. They claimed that bears were untamed animals that would either grow overly reliant on humans or become hostile once they mature. Ranger Victor went to the bigger local area, her cabin in particular, to inform her that she was putting herself in danger. But Anna went with her. Her heart, understanding that occasionally kindness must transcend the norm. She fed them wisdom for 3 months, shielded them, and assisted in their development. She kept a cautious distance to make sure they would continue to be wild, but offered sufficient assistance to assist them. Endure until spring, when temperatures will be warmer. When the cubs came, they left her in their care. As nature had intended, they entered the woodland, had become more resilient. Their fur was lustrous, and with their assured motions, Anna observed them vanish into the underbrush with a hint of melancholy and contentment. She believed her role in their tale had concluded with the belief that they would put her out of their minds as they accepted there she had no way of knowing about her wild nature, that her aroma would stick in their minds, her voice, and most all, her generosity that no one could have foreseen. How all 3 of these bears would come back at important events in her life, paying her back kindness in ways that would depart from the entire area was taken aback by what transpired. Would take place over the following 5 years. Bears would develop into strong adults. Yet rather than disregarding their beneficiary, they would exhibit a degree of dedication and intelligence and appreciation worthy of headlines all around the nation. They would save Anna's life 3 times in one go. Every rescue is more amazing than the finale. Their behavior would put our knowledge of animal intelligence and demonstrate that thankfulness is species neutral. Barrier. The tale of how 3 cubs who were orphans became guardian angels for an elderly woman who once displayed mercy is evidence of the deep reality that even in its most basic form, Compassion sometimes comes full circle in ways we never thought to be feasible 2 years ago. The bear's life was last observed by Anna, and the wilderness kept up its organic rhythm. And even though she frequently considered her wild claims that she had never reconciled with seeing them one more, winter had come. Early in the year, bringing one of the most severe cold spells in recent history external to Anna's cabin. The thermometer had solidly frozen at -50 degrees on a rather harsh December day, and had a potentially fatal situation this morning. Circumstances in which her supply of firewood was falling severely short of the plan the village's delivery had not yet come. Because there is no wood and roads are blocked within days, she would freeze to death. Despite the risks, she had no other option but to go into the woods to collect any fallen branches she could come across wrapped in all of her layers. Anna departed in her little sled after a route she had previously taken innumerable times. There was silence in the jungle save for the frozen branches. Breaking in her breathing was difficult since the frigid air felt like she was able to get knives in her lungs and collect some wood despite the remaining effort. She was worn out, but as she looked with increasing fear, she understood that it was home, that was covered by the softly falling snow. Throughout winter, her footsteps throughout the forest might be perilous. Each tree had the same appearance. Anna attempted to do so behind its white blanket, maintain her composure while recalling her husband's outdated guidance on following instructions of the wind. But fear started to creep in as the light began to dim. The temperature was fast decreasing, and she understood that becoming lost in these circumstances implied definite death. Following 1 hour of her strength started to fail her as she wandered. Her fingertips were completely devoid of feeling, and her vision was getting fuzzy, so she stumbled and again fell. Each time discovering getting up is more difficult as darkness went over to Anna and discovered she was being in the initial phases of her thoughts became jumbled due to hypothermia. With a strong urge to go to sleep slipped past her as she was ready to give way to the deep rumble of tiredness. A sound pierced the encroaching darkness. She initially believed it to be the wind, tricking her deteriorating senses. Then, closer this time, she heard it again. A huge black through the whirling snow. As she concentrated her eyesight, a shape appeared. Acknowledged Boris as a fully grown man. The black bear had become gigantic, shoulder height comparable to a tall man. But what transpired next contradicted everything. Boris approached her out of natural behavior, slowly before starting to move in circles, his massive paws leaving deep impressions around her. He was making impressions in the snow. A clear path, followed by Anna's surprised. 2 more bears showed up. Misha and Natasha had also developed strikingly large, but not quite the 3 bears like their brother around Anna, and gave Boris a gentle prod, coaxing her to stand with his nose. As she stumbled to stand, they gathered around her. Boris assumed the lead as Misha and Natasha gently and purposefully flanked her sides. They started assisting her in navigating. The Anna was currently experiencing a time in the forest that would thereafter be considered impossible by experts in wildlife. 3 mature, while a human was being escorted by bears through a blizzard closely matched their speed. As she stumbled to her weaker state when she started to veer, they would wait. Naturally, they would give a quiet grunt to change her course after what appeared to like hours, but was very likely only 40 minutes. Her cabin's familiar shape came out of the gloom that the bears had caused her house along a path that eschewed deep ice spots that are dangerous and snow drifts. However, their help didn't stop there. Misha and Natasha stood watch. Boris vanished into the woods, coming back a few minutes later, pulling a fallen timber that was almost twice as long as him all night long. The bears made many forays into the jungle that brought sufficient firewood to supply, and as they worked purposefully in a depleted store, in cooperation that demonstrated not only intelligence but sincere care for her welfare. Only when her stock of wood was did they finally melt after being fully restocked. Returning to the forest shadows, to the following morning, Anna's closest neighbor arriving in his snowmobile. Dmitri checked on her following the blizzard he discovered. Her cabin is cozy and fully equipped with. When Anna explained to him what had occurred, he first refused to accept it. Her narrative. But the massive bear tracks, the carefully dragged logs in the snow, and the obvious route they had made indicated a story that was unavoidably shared. The events spread throughout the surrounding villages as wildlife scientists and journalists started asking questions. But the bears were no longer there in the vast wilderness, where they only left their footprints. In a remarkable tale of reciprocated generosity, the bears' rescue of Anna's story had changed her standing in the area. From a lonely widow to a legend in the community, some dismissed her account as the imaginings of an old woman, while others regarded it as confirmation of the mysterious bonds that could arise between humans and wild things. But Anna herself paid little attention to the speculation, continuing her quiet life in harmony with the wilderness. Spring arrived, bringing with it an unforeseen threat. The pristine trees around Anna's cabin had caught the attention of illegal loggers. These were not local wood cutters taking trees for their homes, but organized criminals with heavy machinery who stripped entire hillsides bare. Their activities had been pushing wildlife from their natural habitats, forcing desperate creatures nearer to human settlements. On a pleasant May morning, Anna awoke to the distant sound of chainsaws through her window. She could see 3 large trucks. 6 cars are parked at the edge of her yard. Men dressed for work were looking about the tree marking area, using spray paint. Their existence signified more than simply the devastation of the isolated houses in the forest, such as Anna's frequently vanished during. Same procedures for its senior citizens regarded as sad incidents in the wilderness. Anna's heart raced as 2 of the men approached her cabin. She had no phone, no way to call for help. The nearest police station was hours away, because she understood these men operated with the protection of corrupt officials. As one of them knocked on her porch, hard on her door, requesting that she come out to talk about the improved logging process Anna was about to confront, a thunderous roar of intruders reverberated throughout. The sound was so strong that it was cleared. Appeared to tremble the planet itself. From Boris, Natasha, in 3 different directions, and Misha came out of the woods. Had grown even larger since their winter rescue, their muscles rippling under silky black fur. As they moved with deliberate purpose, the loggers froze, and believing that they were not up against a single bear, but 3 mature black bears in motion. Boris took the lead in a well-coordinated formation, placed his enormous form casting in the center. A shadow across Anna's porch's men. Natasha went around to their right, as Misha obstructed their return route to the trucks. What transpired next showed a degree of strategic thinking that would subsequently confound wildlife specialists. The bears did not launch a direct assault, which would have been the logical reaction of territorial wild bears. But instead, they planned in Boris's elaborately menacing show, standing with his back to a frightening height of more over 7 feet, and pressed his paws against Anna's metal. Natasha, the water barrel, crushed it flat. Then Misha started methodically deleting the tools used by the logger, turning their gasoline tanks over and ripping up the TI tires on the vehicles with strong claw swipes. The bears were clearly showing their message. What the intruders could do to them while consciously deciding not to. Demonstration of regulated electricity, and in the wild, restraint was unusual. The loggers' animal behavior observed their costly apparatus being swiftly and methodically demolished, returned to their wrecked cars and escaped. But the bears' shield didn't conclude by removing the immediate danger. Over the ensuing weeks, they created a pattern of trolling around local hunters. Reported Anna's property, observing that they are marking an exceptionally large area that revolved around her cabin. They left trees with obvious claw marks, at establishing a barrier at regular intervals that even the most seasoned offenders learned to appreciate their actions that were seen. Wildlife researchers' attention from Inova Beers Trail University. There were cameras installed with Anna's authorization to record video that would subsequent appearance in the International Journal of Nature documentaries. The bears were documented working in coordinated shifts, having a minimum of 1 consistently upholding Anna's cabin, while the others keep watch, foraged, or rested. Most remarkably, they demonstrated awareness of the dangers posed by others. They welcomed visitors when the doctor visited once a month to make sure there would be bears on Anna's health. Observed for a moment from a distance, then withdraw as soon as they appear content with the purpose of the visiting, shown the capacity to distinguish between real dangers and everyday people action that was well above the norm. The behavior of animals. Never did the loggers come back to Anna's. The bear's portion of the woodland had declared her territory to be an island of safeguarding not only her security, but the nearby wilderness as well. Their acts had a significant impact. Repercussions highlighting the illicit logging activities in the area and ultimately resulting in higher application of legislation pertaining to forest protection. The last and most noteworthy section of the events of Anna's encounter with the bears amid the devastating forest fires that swept throughout the region of Siberia into that year's late summer. The season had been abnormally dry and hot, which is making the what started as a forest turned into a tinderbox. A number of little fires swiftly combined become an uncontrollable fire that is destroying. Anna was the first to encounter everything in its path. Realized the risk when ash started falling around her cabin like gray snow. The horizon had become menacing, orange radiance, and the atmosphere became dense with smoke. That the local government had issued orders for evacuation, but no functioning phone, and the closest neighbor while visiting family. Anna was unable to being fully aware of the threat coming up to her remote house. That the sound of helicopters flying is familiar. She hoped that rescue teams were overhead, were attempting to contain the fire, but the planes were concentrated on defending the areas with a higher population, allowing the isolated areas to deal with the darkness and the fire's rage alone. Anna had a clear view of the flames on a wall of red and orange that ate the forest. With a frightful wind, speed abruptly changed, causing the fire to spread. The heat was coming straight at her cottage. Got intolerable, and breathing increased challenging because of the smoke in the air. Anna was aware that she had to leave, but she was unaware of the turmoil and darkness. Which way would get you to safety? The roar of the impending flames was muffled. The smoke and all other noises had gotten so dense that she could hardly see more than a few paces in front of. Panic started to overpower her familiar shapes. Boris came out of the smoky darkness. Misha and Natasha showed up at her cabin. However, their actions differed from whatever prior interactions. They displayed evident anxiety, a restless gait, and creating an urgent. Boris's voice came close to Anna's porch and started to scratch her door with extraordinary haste. When Anna stepped, Natasha was coughing from the smoke outdoors. Pressed hard but gently on her legs, guiding her out of the cabin. The bear's purpose became evident when they were present to help her to safety. But what followed revealed a knowledge about how fire behaves that even seasoned forest firefighters were astounded. Rather than turning right away from Anna, was led by the bears and flames along a path that initially appeared to be incorrect. Boris took the initiative, choose a route that twisted through the woods in what seemed to be a perplexing trend. Natasha remained near Anna, occasionally supporting her when she stumbled due to the low visibility, while Misha trailed behind, continuously keeping an eye on their backs. A roundabout way quickly showed its knowledge. The bears were guiding her. Regions where the fire would quickly expand under the direction of their superior comprehension of the terrain and wind patterns. They traverse streams at their lowest depths, traverse the perilous ravines, and stay away from places with a lot of undergrowth that would quickly turn into lethal fire traps. They spent hours traversing the forest. Was filled with smoke when Anna grew worn out. The bears would cease, permitting her to take a quick nap when she was coughing uncontrollably. They guided her to a tiny brook from which she could get a drink and their patience, catch her breath, and being attentive revealed something much near dawn, deeper than animal instinct. At last, they arrived at a huge clearing, where rescue personnel had set up an evacuation center as first responders hurried to assist the old woman who had came out of the forest filled with smoke. They were astounded to witness 3 enormous bears peacefully observing from the edge of the trees. Only after Anna was securely under the supervision of did the medical staff cause her guardians to melt back into the forest's remnants. In the end, the fire destroyed Anna's cottage and a large portion of the forest. When she was eventually permitted to go back to evaluate the harm, she found something remarkable. While everything had burnt there for kilometers around, was a tiny area surrounding the remains of her cottage where it seemed the bears had labored to remove dirt and leaves from that they had made a fire a few days earlier. Rudimentary fire break in an effort to safeguard even before guiding her to her house safety. This last act of defense was wildlife behaviorists with worldwide news and specialists in animal cognition arrived from worldwide in order to record the case. The bear's behavior showed not only memory and intelligence, but complex empathy, problem solving, and what seemed to be a profound awareness of mutual allegiance. In television, Anna's interviews and newspaper articles would reiterate the same straightforward reality. At one point, she had been kind to 3 cubs who were orphans, and they had reimbursed that benevolence a 1000-fold. Her tale became a potent reminder that kindness, even toward wild animals, might reappear in ways that refuse to explain why the bears continue to come. Anna in her brand new cabin inspired by her story. The volunteers show up frequently to check on their senior friend, keeping up their protective guard over her property. Sustained presence acts as a source of income, testifying to the extraordinary relationships that may develop between species and the ability of compassion to surpass the remarkable ways in which natural order is. An amazing story from the Siberian in the wilderness. We saw how a straightforward act of generosity from an old woman turned into a remarkable tale of loyalty, protection, and gratitude. Anna Petrova's decision to save 3 orphan bear cubs not only changed their fate, but led to a series of miraculous interventions that saved her own life multiple times, from rescuing her during a deadly blizzard to protecting her from dangerous loggers, and ultimately guiding her to safety through a devastating forest fire. These bears demonstrated an intelligence and gratitude that challenged our understanding of wild animals. If this incredible story has moved you, consider becoming a voice for wildlife protection in your own community. Support local wildlife sanctuaries, speak up against poaching, and remember that every act of kindness, no matter how tiny, has the ability to back to us in ways we never imagined. After all, Anna's narrative reveals that compassion knows no boundaries, not even between species. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary tales of animal loyalty and human kindness that will warm your heart and restore your faith into the natural world.